I can't hear anything. Here. March 30th.
Yeah.
22nd. Good or bad?
Bad.
Everyone's late.
Good morning, everyone. I just wanted to check in, make sure everybody can hear me okay. We're going to start in about 5 or 6 minutes, but just testing out the microphone. Just let me know in the chat if you can hear me all right. And in about 5 or 6 minutes, I'm going to go over what we're going to be doing today, supplies, all of that. So stay tuned. We'll get ready here in just a few minutes. Again, if somebody can just let me know. All right, perfect. Thanks a lot. I'll see you guys in just a few minutes.
Members of the Edmonton Police Service in support of the Marxist group or the terrorist group Antifa.
Okay, so you lost your job for what you just described occurred in Milk River and Coots. That's correct?
That's right.
But the officers that, bent their knee in front of the media in front of Black Lives Matter protest, and the officers that deliberately took the photo op with Antifa, there was no disciplinary action against them.
None to my knowledge.
Do you have an explanation for that?
This is about policy, politics. Of course, they rhyme for a reason. I am speaking to this panel today because I can expect to I can objectively speak to the policies of the Edmonton Police Service that were not about health. They were about politics, and it hurt our membership, and it has hurt Canadians. It's hurt me and my family personally. Obviously, I had to take an early retirement, so my travel to Milk River and Coots on a day off to
Morning, everybody. So I'm going to get started here in just a few minutes. Just wanted to kind of go over what we're going to be doing for the painting today. And I'm going to allow, a little bit of time here for extra people to join, just because sometimes, technology and everything, it can be a little bit difficult sometimes for everybody to get into the room, find the correct link and all of that. So first of all, thanks for being here. And as some of you know, I recently had a pretty bad injury. So I tore my pectoralis muscle and I ended up having to have surgery. So normally I'm in a sling. I have it off right now. I was told I can take it off when I'm sitting. So you will see me paint a little bit left-handed today. Probably like some of the bigger brush strokes, some of the background, some of the things that I find easier to paint left-handed. I can use my right hand. I just have to brace it on the chair, which is perfect because I can still do like the fine details with my right hand, which is the hard part to do left-handed. So I have everybody muted. If somebody's mic pops on and I mute you, hopefully don't take offense. It's just if there's a lot of people in the room, sometimes it can get a little bit crazy if everybody's talking. So what I'm going to do is keep everybody muted. If you want to have your camera pointed towards your canvas, that would be great, because as I go through this, I plan on checking in on people's paintings and seeing how they're doing. I can see them all up here on my screen. I have to scroll through them because there's a bunch of people in here, but throughout the painting, there'll be times where I ask if anybody wants a critique. If a lot of people say they want a critique, I might not be able to do everyone just because of time constraints, but I will do as many as I can. I'm just going to go over some of the stuff that we're going to do and just a few things about the supplies, and then we'll get started. So first thing I want to do is just talk about the colors, just so you can have them out and ready. I did have them listed, but I'm just going to grab them here and then show you the colors. If you don't have some of these colors, I can give you some ideas for different colors to use, and I'll try to do that right now. So we'll be using alizarin crimson. I've got Liquitex Professional for mine. Any alizarin crimson is fine. I have it in Utrecht. I have it in golden, but this is the one I'm using today. So if you have this one, feel free to use that one. Again, brand doesn't really matter, but alizarin crimson. If you don't have this color, you can just take, if you have a purple color and cad red, you can mix purple and cad red together and you'll get something somewhat similar. So that's an option if you don't have alizarin crimson. So that's one of the colors we're going to be using. Ultramarine blue, I have this in golden. Again, doesn't matter the brand, but ultramarine blue. If you don't have ultramarine blue, you could use cobalt blue. Something darker is better, but ultramarine blue is the next color there. I have yellow ochre. So if you don't have yellow ochre, Naples yellow would probably work okay. Cadmium yellow might be a little too strong, but yellow ochre, that's the next color. I have raw umber. If you don't have raw umber, burnt umber works fine. Titanium white. And I have cad red. I actually have the cadmium free red, which Liquitex makes, but it's still the same color. It's still cadmium red, but without the cadmium in it. So less toxic. So I've got that. If you don't have cadmium red, any red that's like orangish red works the best. But try not to use anything like too like bold with the red. Cadmium's pretty strong, but it's kind of on the orange scale. So you want to try to stick with something like that. At any point, if you have any questions, you can just post them in the chat and I will see them as we're going through this. So those are the colors we're going to be using today. I'm going to go over some of the brushes. So I use my brush set for all of my paintings, and my brush set's on sale right now. So I just got a new order coming in for those brushes. If you want to get them $20 off right now, just go over to my website, timgagnon.com. They're $20 off right now until I sell this next set, and then they're going to go back to the regular price. So if you want some brushes, check that out. But the brushes that we'll be using today, big background brush. So it kind of looks like a brush that you'd paint a house with, except in this set, the bristles are a lot finer and softer. But we'll be using this mostly just to block in the background. So anything, if you don't have a brush like this, anything big, like a brush like this, anything big, we are using a small canvas, so it doesn't have to be huge, but anything bigger to block in the background. I have a variety of brushes here that I'll be using. Fan brush. Okay, we'll be using that. We won't be using a ton. If you don't have a fan brush, it really won't matter too much. I have a flat brush here, and it's pretty thin, but flat brush. Then I have a smaller flat brush, which I use to paint branches with sometimes. If you don't have this small flat brush, that's okay. Again, you just want brushes that are kind of similar. A lot of times when I do paintings, the brush shape doesn't matter too much. Okay, so speaking of flat brushes, I have this brush that has, it's a flat brush, but the bristles are a little bit stiffer and they kind of spread out. This is what I use to paint foliage with. And you can see like the bristles are kind of like malleable. So like if you bend them and push them around, they make different shapes. And that's kind of important for creating foliage. We won't be doing a ton of foliage in this painting, but we will be doing some. So if you have any like kind of stiff brush, it really won't, you know, something, even if it was a round brush and it kind of had like the stiffer bristles, you can still do foliage. And I'll show you that once we get to that point. And then I have a liner brush, script liner brush. You can see long bristles. I use this to create branches. Again, you can use a small flat brush for that too. We'll talk about that when we get there too. Then I have a round brush, and I'll just be using that here and there, just kind of randomly. If you don't have a round brush, flat brush will work fine, filbert brush will work fine. But again, I'm going to hold them up here and then just go over them again really quickly. Got a big background brush for blocking in. I have 3 different flat brushes, one with stiff bristles for foliage. I have a round brush, liner brush, and a fan brush. They're very well used, as you can see there. We will be starting off with a big brush here in just a few minutes. So again, brushes on my website on sale right now, $20 off until I sell them out, and then they'll be going back. I think I have probably like 8 or 9 sets available right now. All right, so those are the supplies. Those are the brushes. What we're going to do is we're going to be doing a misty forest painting today, and we're going to do a little bit more of an advanced one than we did last time. And that's just basically what we're going to be doing is the same type of thing, but with more color and a little bit more detail. So almost the same type of thing, but just a little bit more difficult. So if you were here for the last one, it's basically going to be the same approach. One last thing before we get started. Now, there have been some people that joined after I started the introduction here. Just want to mention that I have everybody muted. I will unmute you and bring you on screen when we do critiques, and I'll be doing those throughout the painting. I will be posting this. I'm recording it, so I will post this afterwards for you to have like a refresher, because I assume not everybody will finish the painting within the time frame. Some people want to keep working on it afterwards, just learning the techniques. So I will record it. I'll be posting it on my website, and you can watch that. Last thing to mention before we get started too is after you watch this, if you enjoy it, I'll be doing these twice a month for the next year. So if you join my membership program, which is basically you pay one fee for the year, you get access to all of my lessons. I have a couple hundred lessons on my website, plus access to all of the Zoom workshops that I do. So again, 2 per month, and I'm going to be doing things like painting animals, painting people, florals, landscapes, clouds, pretty much everything, oil and acrylic. So today I'm using acrylic, just want to clarify on that too. And that's pretty much everything. What we're going to do is we're going to get started here. I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to turn my camera towards my canvas, and I'm going to take a minute and get my paint out. And I'm going to show you the amount of paint that I'm going to be using for the first step. So again, if you have any questions at any time, just post them in the comments section, and I will answer them out loud unless it's a direct message. If it's a direct message, I'll try to get to it as soon as I can. Problem is I just have to type and I have to heave my arm up here and start typing. So again, for those of you who just joined, one last thing, I will be painting left-handed a little bit here today, and that's because I had surgery on my right arm. It's not fully healed. I'm still going through rehab and all that stuff, and I can use it minimally, so I can place it on the armchair and like do fine detail. So you'll see me paint left-handed. I'm not left-handed. Doesn't mean you have to paint left-handed. You don't want to make it more difficult for yourself. But if you do see that and you think it's weird, it's just because that's how I'm doing it right now. So let's get started. This first part, just think of this first part as abstract. Don't worry about getting anything perfect. We're just going to make a nice colorful background. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn my camera. Thanks again, everyone, for being here. All right, I'll turn my camera. I'm going to get my paint out, and then I'm going to show you how much paint I'll be using. And I would have had it out beforehand, but you know, acrylics dry very quickly. So it's much better to keep them covered as long as possible. So the first three colors I'll be using, I'm going to be using ultramarine blue, titanium white, and alizarin crimson. So those are the first three colors I'll be using. All right, I'm going to get them out onto my palette. And this is what I'll be doing is I'll hold the palette up a lot like this while I mix color so you can see. But I'm going to get my paint out now. I'm going to be using more alizarin and white than I am blue. So I'll show you that here in just a second. So the trick here is you're actually going to probably get out more paint than you would typically need, just because we'll be using these same paints throughout the middle ground too. All right, so I'll show you this here, and then I'll give you a few minutes to get your paint out. So I've got my alizarin crimson up here. I've got my ultramarine blue and my titanium white. And you can see I have relatively big piles of the paint. That's because I want to continue to use that paint throughout the lesson. So that's the amount of paint you're looking for. I'm just going to hold that up here for a minute or so and let you get that out, and then we'll get started here in just a minute. All right, so those are our colors, and like I mentioned before, I've got a large brush here. And the great thing about this first part is painting left-handed doesn't really matter because we want it to be kind of abstract. So with your brush, what I suggest doing for this first part is I had my brush in water. So you can see, you know, it's kind of wet there. My water's a little dirty, but it's a little bit wet. And that's because that first part of this, I want to have the paint kind of go on really smoothly. So I'm going to take some alizarin crimson, just a little bit of ultramarine blue, and then some white. I'll go a little bit more blue, and I'm not mixing it perfectly. Got it kind of half mixed, I would say. Okay, so I've got a decent amount of paint on my brush. See a decent amount of paint on here. And again, sorry for the left-handedness, but we're gonna go up here and basically we're gonna start at the top. And we're gonna do just kind of swishing back and forth. You want good coverage on the canvas. All right, you can see not perfectly mixed together, lots of kind of random brush strokes. The next step is I'm going to take a little bit more white and a touch more blue. Not perfectly mixed, just kind of randomly mixed. I'm going to go just below this area. Same type of thing. Kind of random throughout, not worried about getting anything perfectly blended together. Really just kind of working it around, swirling. And what I'm trying to do here is get it a little bit lighter the lower I go. So I'm going to continue adding white. I don't want it ever to be pure white. I'm going to come down here, so a little bit lighter. I don't want that blue streak in here, so I'm just mixing. Down here. Swirling around a little bit. And then you can leave the very bottom white. You can bring it down all the way if you want to, but I'm just going to leave the very bottom portion white. So you can see very abstract to start with. One thing I'm really looking for when I do this is to make sure that I've got a very thick layer of paint on here and that all of my canvas is completely covered. I don't want any little white specks coming through the canvas. I want this to have a nice solid layer on it. That's one thing with acrylic paint. As it dries, it kind of shrinks a little bit. So what will happen is if you don't have a good layer of paint on as it dries, you start to see little specks of canvas because the paint comes up out of those little, especially if you have a textured canvas like I do, the paint will kind of like seep back out of those spots, and then you'll see through to the background, which is okay in some spots as long as it's kind of like minimal. But if you have a lot of spots that are open like that, it can kind of just look bad, like you didn't quite finish the painting. With that said, if you ever go and look at a Picasso painting, you'll notice he didn't cover his paintings perfectly either. So it's up to your preference. If you don't mind having some white specks showing through, that's not a big deal. I'm a little more picky, I guess, with that. So I don't like having that stuff showing through. So again, trying to get that nice and covered. All right, what I'm going to do now is I'm actually going to just put my paint away for a second and take a look to see where everybody's at. So I like to cover my paint. If you have a palette box like this, I don't even like seal it. I just put a cover over it. It helps keep the paint from drying super fast. I am going to wipe off my brush. I probably won't use this brush again. So pretty much just use that to get the background covered. I I don't foresee myself using that brush again. All right, I'm just going to turn for a second, just kind of scroll through some of the paintings that people have their cameras on. I just want to make sure that everybody's working along here. Oh yeah, you guys are keeping right up, no problem. All right, awesome. I see a few different colors. That's really cool. I wish I would have mentioned that in the beginning. That's something that's really cool about these paintings is that you can kind of get away with any color for this. This lesson is basically a value lesson. So, and I don't mean like value as in like dollar store. It's basically like values are the lightness or darkness of the paint. So what you do is with a misty forest to create atmosphere is you start off with a base color or a color mixture, like we're using kind of like a pinkish purple. And what you do is you darken each layer as you come out and you create lots of depth. So you can get away with using any color. Usually what I would suggest with these types of paintings is to try to stay within either cool colors in the background, warmer colors in the foreground, or like an analogous color scheme, colors that are all like connected to each other, like purple, blue, red, is basically what we're doing. But yeah, so you can, I like that. I saw some people using some different colors there. It's really cool. So far so good. I'm seeing that a lot of people got the background painted in. For this next part, basically what we're doing is we're just going to use some white, some lighter color, and we're going to start cutting out the background. So we did this last time too. This time we're going to take it a little bit further with the complexity. So I'm going to turn my camera here again, and we'll go over that next part. And if you have any questions at any time, post them in the comments, and I will get to them as quickly as I can. All right, so I'm going to turn this best I can. All right, that's pretty good there. All right, so for the next step, I'm going to use a round brush, but if you want to use a flat brush, you can. So either or. I might end up switching between the two anyway. So I'm going to grab my paint, and what I'm going to do next is basically stick with the same color. I'm just adding white to it. And we're not going to add a ton of white to it. We're adding enough to bring the value up. So lighter. And then if you come up here, you can see it's quite a bit lighter. If it's super, super light, just mix some of your alizarin and blue back into it. What we're trying to do is get a color that's a little bit lighter, but not like super drastically lighter. All right, and I am going to go right-handed now here, so hopefully my arm works a little bit. So for me, this is too light. So I'm going to show you. I'm going to go and add in some alizarin and a little bit of blue. And then I'm just going to kind of test it next to it. That's probably a little bit dark. So what I want to do is go a little bit lighter. And that's just about right there. So you can see, I don't want like drastic contrast yet. I want to save room for going lighter. So you can see this part here is very, very light. And this part here is just slightly lighter. That's what we're going for. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to cover up my previous color there. What I want to do is think about a tree, and we're thinking about the space between the trees. So, and we're also thinking about the ground. So what I want to do is paint an opening and leave the space around it to create a tree. So first thing you can do when you're doing this is just paint a square. Okay, and then over here, we'll paint another square. But maybe this one's a little bit, it's more of a rectangle, a little bit narrower. Okay, so now I'm just going to explain how this process is going to work. If you look at this square, and you look at this square, the space between right here, that's going to be the trunk of the tree. So we're cutting out a tree from the background. So what makes this effect really cool is that we have all of these random brush strokes and lots of swirling and shape. And what that does is it creates atmosphere and light, and it creates this very interesting background, which makes a misty forest painting work the way it does. So again, we're painting the openings between. So this square here is an opening between trees. This is the tree trunk, and down here is the ground. So it's a bunch of things that you're thinking about when you do this. So again, like I said, this one's going to be a little bit more advanced than last time. So I'm just going to show you. I usually start with one tree, and I'll start working my color up, and I'm using a round brush again. And I'm going to scrub a little bit. You can see I'm coming up at an angle. This is a branch coming off the tree, and to define that, I'll go over here. And now I have a branch coming up. And as I work my way over here, there's going to be some foliage. So I have little bits of foliage coming down. Now, what I want to do is I want to kind of put this together a little bit more quickly, especially if you're not quite sure of how this is working. I want to put it together really quickly here so you can kind of see what I'm going for. So again, if I'm thinking about openings, you can see through the tree, the background. Even up through here, I want there to be some openings. So within those openings, because we're seeing through the tree foliage to the background, you want the edges of the openings to be soft. So that's why I use a round brush. This is the brush I use a lot for clouds. When I create little gaps and openings in the tree, I want those openings to be soft and almost kind of muted. So I don't want it to have sharp edges anywhere. All right, and then on the ground as well, as you come down to the ground, we want there to be some softness. So I'm going to reload my brush now because I'm running out of paint. And I'm going to do the same thing. We're going to say maybe there's 3 trees up here in the foreground. But what we're going to do is we'll create more trees in the distance in a minute. So I'm going to create this opening. It's going to be a little bit wider. But as I come over, I'm going to come over and again paint in a tree trunk shape. So leaving that dark space there. Little openings up here. And then I'll do one more. Again, thinking about the ground as well as I move across. All right, so basically I'm gonna take this, this part right out, right here. So I just want there to be 3 trees. So basically we painted in all of the negative space and left some trees, tree shapes there. And then you can come up through and add in some openings in the foliage that you can see through. Even up top, if you want to add in a few little pieces here and there. Once you get these first 3 trees in, we're gonna let the paint kind of sit, and you can cover up if you have something to cover up your palette. I would do that because we're going to be using that same color here in just a minute. All right, so one of the areas where sometimes this part in the beginning goes a little bit wrong is going too bright with the color in between the trees. One thing about acrylic paint that is kind of a savior in this aspect is it dries darker, and as it dries, you went over a darker color to begin with. That darker color starts to show through because titanium white, even though it's an opaque paint in general, it still has some transparency to it. It's a semi-transparent paint. So some of the dark color will show through, which is cool because it creates some more atmosphere. But one of the problems I see is going too bright too early in this first part. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn my camera and I'm going to check in with you guys, see where you're at with this. But if you do have your paint out and you can cover it, I have my paint out, you can cover it. That would be great because we're going to be using that same color we just used, that white color. We're going to go brighter and we're going to cut more out of the background. So I'm just going to check in. If you have any questions, let me see here. So I've got some questions here. The base color, it doesn't really matter if it's wet or dry. Mine started out wet, and by the time I got all the way over to the left, it was dry. A couple things. If it's wet and you're mixing your paint onto the canvas and the color is not changing, you'll just have to add a little bit more white because you're actually mixing on the canvas. If it's dry, what I like to do is scrub the paint on, as long as it's 100% dry, scrub the paint on, that way you get softer edges. If you like the feel of wet on wet, you can mist the canvas a little bit. What you might find if you mist is that the paint will start to dry, and then misting it will kind of reactivate it, and you might scrub the paint right off the canvas because it will lose its adhering qualities to the canvas, because the more you add water to acrylic paint, the more it breaks it down. So you can mist it. I would go lightly if you prefer that wet on wet. I like to let it dry as much as possible, and then go over it just so I can scrub without scrubbing the paint off. Again, there's a couple different options there. If it's wet though, just be careful. Don't scrub too hard, just scrub a little bit lighter. I'm just going to take a look at where everybody's at here. All right, looking good, everybody. Let me know if you have any questions at this point. All right, so what I'm seeing so far looks good. All right. Just got to get I was clicking everybody's screen up so I could see everything up close. I'm just gonna go back now, get to where I can see my camera. Okay. So again, yeah, let me know if you have any questions. I'm going to move on to the next step. So the next step is basically the same thing. I'm going to stick with that round brush. All right, so sticking with the round brush, I'm going to take a little bit more white now. Again, I don't want to make this pure white yet. I want this to just move up a little bit in value. And what you can do is just kind of test. That's probably a little bit too light there. So I'm going to go just a little bit of alizarin mix back in, and I'm going to test it again. That's basically what I'm looking for, just a little bit lighter in the value. So next step, basically the same thing. We're going to be cutting out trees from the next layer in the background. So again, you can just paint in a little square. Then another square, maybe this one's a little bit wider. But we're doing two things. We're leaving a little bit of the ground. It doesn't have to be a lot, just a little bit. And then we're leaving that positive space right here to create another tree that's a little bit further in the distance. So with this, the further away you get, a little bit less detailed you get. But I do want to poke in some openings that you can see through both trees. Okay, and then maybe I'll come over here. Put in another tree. All right, so added in another tree over here. We've got one here. I like to go in between each space and add in at least one tree, if not two. So if the space is bigger, I'll add in two. So this one, what I'll do is I'll have this tree right behind this tree. All right, and then over here, maybe I'll put one more in. So you can see how quickly you can create some depth here with this type of painting. Got a little bristle there. I'm gonna get that out of there. All right, so I'm gonna go on to the next layer as well. So I'm just gonna do 3 layers today, and then we'll move on to the foreground after we create this misty forest technique here. So basically, you're taking that same color and you're going more white. Again, it's not pure white. It still has some of that alizarin and blue in it, but you're going more white. And then we're going to come over here in these other openings. And we're going to create more trees. And maybe these ones look a little bit skinnier since they're further away. You can still poke a few openings up in the foliage, probably not as many for this layer. Okay, so if I go here, I can add in another little tree trunk way off in the distance. And sometimes you don't have to add in a tree, you can just kind of add in a little piece of the ground there off in the distance. All right, so we did 3 layers, creating some depth here, and we'll actually at the very end add in another layer way off in the distance with pure white. For now, what we're going to do is we're going to work up into the foreground, into the focal area. So you can see, if you get good at this technique, how quickly you can make a painting. I usually paint these paintings larger, just because the technique translates really well to large paintings, and they're actually very quick to do, because basically you paint an abstract background, you cut out some trees, then you go right into the foreground and create a really detailed tree in the foreground, and you've got this really nice effect. So I'm going to leave the camera up here for the next 5 or 6 minutes for you to kind of, you can observe my painting here as you work on yours. But if you want a critique, this is where I'm going to start off some of the critiques, because we're pretty much through the first part of the background, and we'll be working into the foreground some. So that way I can take a look at where you're at and give you some ideas and suggestions. So if you want a critique, just post that in the comments, and I'll do the first one here in about 5 minutes. I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to work on this. And then I'm going to turn the camera towards me and go over anybody's painting who wants to have their painting looked at. So go ahead and work. And in the next 5 minutes, I'll take a look at the comments. Just make sure you comment if you want me to take a look at yours. All righty, so I'm gonna take a look here. I'm gonna turn the camera. All righty. Okay, I'm gonna take a look at anybody who commented here. Kathleen, if you've already left, thanks for joining. I will have a recording of this, so hopefully you can take a look at that. But thanks for joining. Hope you have a good day at work. I'm going to take a look at Margaret's first. I just have to find you on the list. So what I do when I do these critiques is I'll bring your work up on the screen, and then
I'm not sure. I'm on an iPad, so I'm kind of backwards, so I can't see if you can see it properly.
and then I will unmute you so we can have a conversation. All right, Margaret, I have yours here. Do you have your painting available to take a look at?
Oh, can you not see it? Oh. Can you not see it? Should be
Just
there.
1 second here. All right, so I'm going to remove my spotlight here. All right, so I have you up on the screen. I sent you a thing to unmute you if you want to unmute.
There we go. Let me know if I need to back up with the iPad or if it's okay. Oh, hold on. I know why you can't see it. Just 1 sec. Oh, shoot. Maybe go to somebody else. I need to turn
Just
around.
I don't have I can't hear you, so I don't think it's unmuted. So let me see here. Let me see if I can get it unmuted for you. All right, I can't hear you, but I can see your painting. So I'll just give you a little overview, and then if you can find the spot where to unmute you, I sent a thing that will allow you to unmute, but I don't see where I can do it on my end. So, but so far looks great. I like the dark purple that you have at the top. The only thing I would have done maybe a little differently with that, and you can still do that, is to allow a little bit more of the lighter pink to kind of come up into the darker purple a little bit, just so there's not like a border where the purple and the pink meet together. So to kind of intermingle those colors a little bit more will give it a little bit more of a natural feel. But I love the idea of it being that dark at the top and then kind of transitioning into this lighter pink color. The actual technique, the Misty Forest technique, where you create these openings and the distance looks really, really good. I love that. I think that is very effective. And when we put the foreground tree in the front, that will be great. I guess the only other thing I would probably adjust a little bit is your openings between the branches are all really similar shape. So they're almost like in the same pattern and in the same shape on each tree. And they're also like kind of the same height. What I would do is take some of your foliage color, the darker color you started with, and just eliminate some of those openings. And then maybe add in a few more openings in really random spots. Usually the openings are a little bit more down bottom like you have there. But I would do them a little bit more random and a little more spread out so the spacing isn't as even. Other than that, that's great. You can easily fix that. Like I said, I would just take some of that darker background color, eliminate just a few of the openings, and then maybe add in a few in a little bit more random spot, kind of like spaced out a little bit more. sorry that I wasn't able to hear you, but I'll figure that out more as I do these, but thanks again. Oh, that's good point. Okay, you're right. I had the volume turned down on here, so I apologize for that. All right, if you're still there, if you have any
Yes.
questions, let me know.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yep.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, no, that was great. Thank you so much.
All right,
thank
well, thank you. I'm sorry I couldn't hear you earlier.
No worries.
All right. All right. Well, thanks a lot. I'm going to go on to, let's see who commented here. Karen, I'm going to come to you next. I just have to scroll through and find you. All right. Just 1 second and I'll get you in. I'll send the thing to unmute you. Can you let me know if you can just you can,
Can you
okay,
hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay.
Perfect. All right, so got you up on the screen, looking really good. Wow, nice job. I don't really see too much I would change here. I like the technique that you have. You've got the distance done really well. Atmosphere looks really good. I like all the random brush strokes up top. And I think you've left enough too. So for later, when we add in some really bright areas, you've got some nice spaces there that you can add in even more layers at the very end, which is really nice. Only thing maybe I would do, and this might just be a screen thing, just because all of our cameras are a little bit different, is maybe have just a touch more blue in a few areas at the top, just to kind of like throw in another color. But again, that might just be my camera or your camera, and I'm not quite seeing the colors quite as well.
Yeah, I have the sun behind me too, so.
Oh, okay.
It's
Yeah,
throwing it off. I think it is a little darker than what you're seeing. Actually, there's quite a bit of, this is actually blue on my. Yeah. So I think
that's kind of what I suspected, honestly.
Yeah.
So no, it looks great. It looks great. I don't really think I would change much at this point. You have the technique down really well. It's going to work really well as a background, especially once we add in the foreground stuff. So nice job.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, Martha, I'm going to come to yours next.
Hi, Tim.
Hey, Martha, how are you doing?
Good. How are you feeling?
I'm feeling okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my arm doesn't work really, but
It'll take a while. You have to give it.
yeah, it's supposed to be, it's about 6 weeks with primarily using a sling. So I'm at about 4 weeks now. So well, close to 4 weeks. So a couple
Maybe
more
you
weeks.
won't do that in the gym again. What do you think?
I hope not. If I do, then I just hope it's my left arm next time, not my right arm. Because I can handle if it's my left arm. It's funny when you are right-handed and you lose the function of your right arm or whatever, your dominant arm.
Well, we always tell ourselves you can't use the other arm, but I suppose you can teach yourself.
Yeah, exactly. And like it's a good mental exercise, I guess, even though it's a frustrating one.
Probably a super good discipline for you. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, it's I'm not the type of person to get locked down too much. So I'm going a little bit stir crazy with this, but it's okay.
You're still busy.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome. I like your approach to this already. I like the style, like doing kind of more bare trees. It almost looks like a Florida, like those trees in the, I don't know, like the
the
Everglades.
cypress. Yeah. Well, since I live in Florida, that could be.
Oh, right. So, your surroundings are influencing your thoughts.
Of course.
I like it. I think maybe just adding a little bit lighter between some of the trees to give it, I think it'll just give it a little bit more depth. And yeah, you can go a little bit lighter between some of the trees, but I like the style of it, so I wouldn't change much of that. I think brighter in between some of the trees is just going to give it some more atmosphere, a little bit more depth. And then as we work through, it's just going to create more and more distance. So one thing you can do is if your paint, it looks a little bit wet, which is nice. You can actually do a little bit more white on the brush, and as you mix in, it will mix right on the canvas. Obviously you don't want to go like pure white, but you can go a little bit stronger with the white, and yeah, just like that. That looks great.
Okay.
And that will just open it up even more. And you'll start getting that really nice distance. Yeah, that looks great. So that's kind of what I would go for.
Okay.
Other than that, I don't think I would do too much. I like the style that's going on. It really does remind me of like I don't know, like Louisiana, or going like into the
The
Everglades.
bayou.
Yeah, exactly.
We don't have the bayou here.
No? Okay.
But Everglades are not far. How's that?
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember going to the Everglades a couple of years ago, and yeah, the forest areas are very interesting. So
Yeah. Dense.
yeah,
Yeah.
dense
We're all
and-
fill in Fort Myers.
What's that?
Fort Myers is all fill.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. They really had no trees, or I mean land. It was below sea level, so they had to fill it up.
No kidding.
Nope.
Huh.
Yep.
I remember I went on a boat ride once in the Everglades, and I can't remember where it was, but they said the whole land that we were looking at was built up on seashells.
Yeah.
Like they did that or something like that. Anyway.
Yeah.
really
You find the oddest things in your yard.
That's true.
Just, yeah, as you're digging and stuff, the really odd stuff, but it's all
Oh,
fill.
I bet. So what you've just been doing while we were talking here, I love that. Like that's giving it a lot more depth. I think that's just kind of what you're going for, and keep at it, and it looks great.
Wonderful. Thank
Right.
you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
All right, let's see. All right, Anna, I think I'm going to come to yours next if I can find you. All right. Oh, I had you, but now I lost you again. All right, I'll find you. All right, there you are. All right,
Hello, are you?
I think I got you unmuted. Yep, I can hear you.
Yes, yes.
Oh, awesome. That looks great. So yeah, I think you got that technique down really well. The very first part that we worked on looks really, really good. I like the color. You kind of stuck with almost kind of like a more not a sporadic color theme. So it's like a little bit more solid all the way through, but it works really, really well. I like it. I would say with that very front part, the openings, they're a little bit, if you look at the openings, they're almost like the same shape and the same size. I would try to like, yeah,
These
those
one?
little, yeah.
Okay,
So they're almost
okay.
like spaced evenly, and then they're almost like all the same size. So
Yes.
what I would do is, what you're doing is perfect. I would just try to make it a little more, have more variety. So make some of those openings a little bit smaller. I wouldn't go bigger, but make some of them a little bit smaller. And then the spacing, especially the tree, I think it's probably all the way to the right, how I'm looking at it. It might be, yeah, that one. If you look at the spacing of those openings above that tree, like kind of in the foliage area, they're almost like all half an inch from each other. So I would take and I would like eliminate some of them and then open it up, make maybe one that's a little bit closer, one a little bit further away, one's a little smaller, one's a little bit bigger. The more random you can make that, the more realistic it's going to look like. But the technique that you're doing is perfect. It's all of a matter of just changing the shapes a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. One other thing I would just say is that if you look right in the middle, The three trees right in the middle. The other opening, perfect. So you see how you have some of those lighter openings? Those are
Yes.
really, really good. I would add some of those openings onto the other side of the painting too, so towards you. Right, yeah, like those, that one's really good, but go to the next opening,
Okay,
and then do the, yeah, that one. So add in a few brighter ones right there, and that's going to create a little bit more depth in your painting.
okay. Thank you.
Awesome job.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Alrighty. All right, Francesco, I'm going to come to you next. I can find you. It's funny, I have to scroll through all these.
Does it work?
A lot of people in here. Huh,
Can
there
you
you go.
hear me? Hi, Tim. Hi, from
Hey, how's it
London.
going?
Yeah, good. Calling from London here.
Oh, London?
Yeah, so it's a bit cold and the paint is taking some time to dry, but
Oh, yeah. What's your time? What time is it there?
actually, I don't know, it's 4 o'clock.
4? Oh, okay, not
In the
bad.
afternoon. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. All right. So
Let's see. So
can you see it? No, why is it out? Is it in focus?
yeah, it's a little blurry. I'm not like super familiar with Zoom. I'm still learning it. So
I think it's my computer actually. Let me see if I can move it around a bit.
okay.
No, it's not gonna work, I think. For some reason it's not seeing it. It's my computer, I think.
Yeah, it seems like it's blurred everything out except you, which is probably
Yeah.
some sort of, like
Yeah, let me
filter.
just see. If you want to go to the next person, maybe there is some effect, you see, maybe there is some, some of the screen background
Yeah.
effect, how to get rid of it, yeah.
I'm gonna go over to Williams and I'll come back to you.
Thanks.
All right. Well, I'm gonna go to William Thomas's iPhone here. I'm gonna unmute you here just 1 second.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. How's it going?
Yeah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good.
So I am computer not savvy, so I'm trying to get you to see my painting.
Oh, I can see it perfectly now. I'm not like familiar with Zoom. Like I just started doing this for these workshops and like I'm getting the hang of like switching people and stuff like that. But then like you can do like different filters and things like that. And I don't even know how to do any of that stuff. So
We'll all learn together just like we are now.
exactly.
I have two questions for you. One,
Okay, perfect.
as you had mentioned, I didn't do a very good job with the, I thought I was putting on very thick paint, but of course I came up with some pixelations at the top and then tried to go back and fix it. I don't know if I messed that up. And the other question is way over to the right-hand side. I came in too far, I think. So I have this big gap, which makes me wonder, like, is this look like too big of the branches over here with no big trunk in here?
Right. I see what you're saying. So there's a couple things that I would do. First of all, not having enough paint on there really isn't a huge deal because after we add in the foreground, you can kind of go back and like start with the original colors and then kind of like work your way into spots that might not have had enough paint and you'll never notice. So I'll talk about that at the end.
Okay.
So I wouldn't worry about that too much. It's always nice to kind of get that first layer down really, really well. But if it doesn't happen, there's ways to fix it later. So it's not like the end of the world or anything with that. I like your paint setup, by the way, back there. It's nice.
Thank you. Yeah, it's pretty new, pretty excited.
That's awesome. So for your other question with the opening, so two things I would do. First thing you can do is brighten up like a few openings in the background, which will almost make a darker trunk in the middle ground. Does that make sense? So you're gonna take some of your openings and brighten them up even more. Down in the very big opening there.
Oh, okay, down here. Yeah.
So what you would do is you would take, you know how we created the we took the the negative space and we brightened it up, and then we left the
Yes.
positive space, and that leaves like a trunk of a tree.
Yes.
I would do that same thing, just go a little bit brighter, and you could
Okay.
leave a trunk there, and that will become a focal point in that big opening.
Okay, great. Okay.
Another thing you can do, if you don't want to do that, is you can, you know how that opening has a really long branch kind of going along the bottom of the side?
Yes.
You could actually paint in some of that. So there's some more openings, and that will make it so it's not like this just really big long line. So you're
Okay.
basically gonna just take some of that middle ground color and create some more, just some more openings up through there. And it will make it so it's not just this big long line. You can actually paint some of it even out, kind of going up as an angle. So rather than it going straight across, you could just have it kind of coming up at an angle a little bit.
Okay.
That makes sense?
I think it does. We'll see.
Right. Other than that, I would say your technique looked really good and your colors look really good. So I would say really good shape for the background.
Thanks. And I'm using my husband's computer, which is why it says William Thomas.
Yeah, I just figured that out. I also saw your comment underneath.
Okay. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
I got the camera to work if it's okay now.
Okay. Yep. Sounds good.
Good. Let's see. Let's see if can you see it?
Oh yeah, I can see it perfectly fine now. Oh, nice job. I really love your brush strokes up top. I like all the kind of like the swirling brush strokes. It gives it a lot of movement, which is really cool. Especially with a painting like this, I think sometimes we can get a little bit kind of static in how we paint it. Like we're trying to really paint trees and trying to get them perfect. I prefer like what you're doing there, like having that like nice movement and everything. Because when you add in the foreground, that's where it kind of has the more detail and everything, and you're kind of creating this abstract atmospheric background. So I really like that. I would say the distance is done really well. The only thing I might change a little bit is you have one thick tree trunk, and then a lot of the other ones are like the same size. You might not be able to be easy to change at this point, but you've got that one big one, which is great. I would try to get a little more variety. Like if you do another painting like this, a little bit more variety in the thicknesses of the trees, just so you have just a little bit more of that kind of like natural look to it.
Right.
I lost you there for a second. Okay. All right, there you're back. So other than that, like I think the distance looks really good. Like I said, I really like the brush strokes and the colors are good. Do you have any questions about anything specifically?
No.
All right.
Right. Thank
Awesome
you.
job. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right. 1 second here, everyone. And I'm going to all right. Did I miss anyone? Because comments sometimes things are kind of getting a little bit buried here. So if I missed anybody, let me know down below. All right, I see you, Joe, there. All right. Oh. I'm trying to unmute you here. Let's see. Oh, I can hear you now.
Hi, Tim.
How you doing?
Hello.
Well, thank you. Sorry, we've got load shedding in South Africa.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, electricity load shedding. So we're sitting in the dock. But we'll quickly show you the painting. So this one here.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Okay.
I love that. I
And
love
this is
that.
my-
That's great.
This is my wife. Okay. So.
So, so I'll
Yes.
give you a couple of comments.
Okay.
It's a little bit blurry. I'm just gonna be honest. I think it's just
Okay.
probably so far apart that, but I can make it out pretty well. So,
Okay.
I would say with that first one, very good on the technique, very nice values. I actually think your values are like spot on. Like you've got the nice dark
So let's put that-
foreground, you've got good middle layer, and you've got good distance. I can make that out pretty well. I would say as for like a critique or something to work on is something I've said a couple times, and that's with the openings between the branches and the foliage.
Okay.
Try to shoot for something a little more sporadic. You can see that the shapes are similar in size and then spacing.
Okay.
So it's actually one of the harder things to do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's one of the harder
Does,
things
yeah.
to do with these types of paintings,
Mm.
just because it's hard to visualize like what an opening would look like. And
Yeah.
what I would suggest is just try to make things a little bit smaller at first. And then if you find that
Okay.
they're you need them to be bigger, you can start expanding them a little bit. So what I would do is I would just go back to the original color and just kind of whittle those down just a little bit.
Okay, perfect. And
Yeah.
this is oh wow.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I can see that. That's great. Another great job with the values. Very nice distance. Again, I would basically say the same type of thing. Just working on the openings a little bit between the foliage and try to make them a little more sporadic, a little bit smaller. Other than that, like I don't. As for the misty forest, like there's really not a whole lot more you need to do with this type of painting. So I would just focus in on some of those openings that are kind of like up in the foliage area on the top part of your painting. Just try to get them a little more sporadic and a little bit more random in size.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks. I'll be checking in with
Thank you so
everybody
much.
here again
Right. Thanks.
soon. All right, Colleen, I'm gonna take a look at yours, and then I'm gonna move on to the next step. And if you don't get critiqued on this round, no worries, because I'm going to be doing another critique at the end. All right, 1 second, Colleen. I'm going to send you an unmute request. All right, I should have you unmuted now.
Okay,
All right, I can hear you.
all right,
Awesome job. I see you say you said you were a beginner.
yep,
But I would say you're doing an awesome job, especially if you're saying you're a beginner. You've got I love that you have that really big tree on the left. That's really, really nice. You've got some nice skinny trees in the distance. You've got some nice kind of like middle-sized trees. Your values are really nice. It's awesome job.
thank you.
You're welcome. If you also, another thing that you did, which I think is really cool, and I don't even know if it happened accidentally or not, but you've kind of got like almost like a slope to the ground, which is really a natural looking thing too, which is really cool.
Purely by accident.
Hey, that's one of the best things about paintings is like that's kind of how you learn new things, is you do something accidental, and then you just have to, the key is if you do something accidental that's really good, is that you have to remember that you did that. So like
Yes.
in the future, just like, oh, I want to do that again and create, how did I do that? So,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's a good accident for sure. If I were to adjust anything, it would just be one main thing, and that would be, you've got kind of like two main trees in the foreground, and the foliage from those two trees creates this really straight line across the middle of the canvas. What I would do is try to manipulate that a little bit so it's not a perfectly straight line. All the way on the right-hand side of the canvas, I believe, you've got this little indentation that goes up into the foliage. That's kind of what you want to look for
over here?
Other side, sorry. So left side.
That's okay. My rights. Okay.
Yep. So like
Okay.
right at the very bottom, you have that little indentation coming up in that.
This?
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
Yep.
That's what you want to kind of mimic in the middle part of the painting. So you've got a couple small little indentations, but I would push them a little bit more. So that way you're eliminating that really straight line across the middle. So compositionally, when doing a painting, you want to try to avoid any really straight lines that cut the painting in half. So in order to avoid that, all you have to do is just, like I said, kind of make some indentations going up through, which will break that line up a little bit.
Perfect. Okay.
Other than that, that's an awesome job, and I'd be pretty happy if I was a beginner and I did that. So nice
Thank
to-
you so much.
All right.
I appreciate it.
You're
Okay.
welcome. Thanks for showing.
Thank you.
All right, so I'm going to move on to the next step, and if I, like I said, if I missed you on critique this round, just make sure you comment at the end, because at the end I'm going to go over everybody's painting that wants to, unless every single person says it, and then like we might be here for 4 or 5 hours. But thanks everyone for showing your paintings. That's really awesome. Not only does it help you, it helps other people too, to kind of go over some of the things that maybe you didn't think of. So really cool. What we're going to do next is we're going to move into the foreground, and I'm just going to go through a lot of it over the next 40 minutes or so. And I will kind of pop in and ask questions, and anytime you have a question, just make sure you comment. I might not see it right away, but I will glance over frequently as we go through this. So I'm going to turn my laptop here back over, get this back in view. So really cool also that to have a bunch of people from all over the world painting with me. It's really, really cool. I know like 10 a.m. is like, I don't really know. I don't know like the time zones really well. I'm gonna have to learn them, but 10 a.m.'s, you know, kind of like this neutral time that I thought, but I'm sure some people are painting really late or really early. So the next brush we're going to use is a fan brush. And we're going to be adding some raw umber to the palette. We're going to be using the same colors. This time we're just adding a little bit of raw umber. And that's just because we want to make the color a little bit darker and a little bit more earthy. So I'm going to take my fan brush now. And if you prefer to mix this next color with a palette knife or a different brush rather than your fan brush, feel free. Fan brushes aren't always the best brush to mix with, but that's just me. I'm a lazy artist. I like to just mix with whatever brush I have in my hand. So I'm going to take my alizarin crimson. I've got a little bit of water on my brush. I'm going to add in some ultramarine blue. And then I'm going to add in some raw umber. So we're going to get almost kind of like this, I would say like a purple brown color is what we're going for. It doesn't have to be perfectly mixed. Again, it's just a nice dark color, but it's a very harmonized color. So it's going to go along really well with the painting that we have going. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a focal tree, but I'm going to paint the ground in first. So again, I've got some water on my fan brush, and that's because I want the paint to be a little bit more ink-like. So with the fan brush, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down below. We've got this ground area for these trees. I want to come down to about maybe ½ an inch below. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start right in the middle, and I'm just going to do some brush strokes like this. And you can see as I pull down, the fan brush leaves these little points up at the top. I'm going to bring it all the way down to the bottom. And what I want to do here is have a little bit of ground shape. So I'm going to have the ground coming down, and then it will flatten out here as we go towards the edge of the canvas. I want to fill all the way in down to the bottom. So the key here with this is two things. We're creating the shape of the ground, so the slope. And we have a lot of flat stuff going off in the distance, so I wanted to change that up and add a little bit of slope just for some visual interest. So what we do again, I'm just going to reiterate or kind of just show again the technique. And what we're doing is we're taking our color, we've got a little bit of water in the paint. With our fan brush, we're pressing against the canvas and then pulling down, and that will leave the bristle shapes. And that creates a grass shape. If you don't get that perfect, that's something you can work on a little bit later in the painting. So don't worry about it getting it absolutely perfect. So at a normal speed for me painting, I would just basically tap the brush and then pull down. So what you can see is I created almost like a little bit of a hill here. And that's just to give some visual interest. We don't want it to just be flat everywhere. So for this part, I just want to really fill in, get everything blocked in nicely. And I think what I'm going to do, just looking at my background here, I have my hill kind of coming up, and it's kind of within this tree here. And what I want to do is create a little bit of a hill that I can put my focal tree on. So I don't like how that kind of came up here, because then my tree would block that middle tree. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push the ground over a little bit, so that way I can have the tree coming up through here. And then I'll bring it back down a little bit. All right, so we've got this nice kind of visually interesting ground up here in the foreground. I like that people are posting where they're from. I see Portugal and New Hampshire. New Hampshire is my neighbor. I'm in Maine, for anybody who doesn't know. I should have said that in the beginning, but I live in northern Maine, right up near Canada. So the town that I'm in right now is Presque Isle, Maine. And if you ever wanted to Google that, you'll see I'm way up here. We still have a little bit of snow. It's pretty much all gone at this point. We have like some snow banks that were kind of plowed up during the year. So we have a little bit of snow in the higher areas, in our hilly areas, but it's almost all gone now, which is good. Sometimes our snow lasts into May. So we're doing pretty good this year, even though the weather isn't like great. It's still a little bit cold here. But yeah, let me know where you're from. It's really interesting to me. All right, so in regards to the painting, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stick with that same color now, and I'm going to switch to a flat brush. So I'm going to go to my flat brush here, and I'm going to stick with that same exact color. So same color. If you want, you can go. You don't want to go darker, but you can just mix in some more paint. And what I want to do is I want to start painting in the focal tree. So it will eliminate this tree here. Not a big deal because that's kind of in the distance. I wanted to try to maintain these trees here to create that ultimate distance coming forward. So what I'm going to do is I'm turning my brush. I've got a flat brush here. but I'm going to turn it onto the long end. So I'm using that very narrow part of the brush. And what I want to do is I'm just going to come up here and create the shape of the tree. As I come down to the ground, I'm going to splay it out a little bit. Because I want it to kind of have, I want this to be like an old tree. You want to make it look a little bit different than the trees in the background, just to create this nice kind of unique tree that has some character to it. So I'm going to go a little bit fatter than the trees that I've got in the distance. And then as I come down to the bottom here, I'm going to splay it out a little bit so it looks like there's roots coming off. And also the edges of the tree, I want to make very kind of like bumpy and random, because I want, like I said, I want it to look like maybe an older tree. So I'm just kind of shimmying around out towards the edge. Okay, another thing I'm going to do before I start building the tree up is with my flat brush, I'm going to create some rock shapes. So I'm going to come up with a little angle and then come down. And put a few little grasses back in. Then maybe I'll have like a bigger rock over here to kind of fill this space. So just think of like a kind of like a polygon shape, but with some random little bumps in it. All right, so I've got that big rock there. And maybe I'll just do another little bump there for a rock. All right, so we're always trying to add in like some character to these paintings. You can see here, you can turn a flat brush up on its side and paint in little grassy shapes. All right, so just basically a silhouette to start with. But you can see how you add in, once you add in these dark colors here, how it pushes everything back a lot. All right, I'm going to stick, again, same color. One thing you can do with this type of painting, though, if you want to get fancy with it, you take that same color, add some more blue and raw umber to it. And what happens is it starts to get darker. So as you move up here, underneath the foliage, you've got a little bit more of a shadow. So if you want to, you can go a little bit darker. Once I have that trunk shape in, I'm going to start bringing some branches off. I'm going to do a nice thick branch coming off here. And we'll have the trunk of the tree continuing up. Maybe another, got a big branch coming off there. So I always start with the bigger branches and then add in smaller branches as I go. So maybe I'll do one kind of coming at a different angle up here. Another one like that. And I want to make sure I carry the trunk of the tree all the way up off the top. So I'm trying to create some different thicknesses with the branches. A lot of this will get covered up with foliage, so if you don't get them perfect, don't worry about it too much. basically we're creating the skeleton of the tree, and we can fix pretty much everything, even if there's like a few little mess ups here and there, even with the branches. So I've kind of got the overall shape. I want to make this branch, I think, a little bit thicker though. So a couple things. I'm going to let that sit for a second. A couple things that I want to mention for this next part is you want to have like really random kind of sporadic thicknesses to your branches. And then when we start doing finer branches, you don't have to overthink it too much, because like I said, a lot of this will get covered in foliage. So if you mess up here and there, don't worry about it. But when we start using the liner brush to create branches, how you create branches is all about pressure. The harder you push on the brush, the thicker your branch is going to be. The lighter you push, the thinner. So when you're in closer to the trunk of the tree, you're going to be pushing harder. And as you get further out, you're releasing the pressure. So I'll show that here in just a minute. What I'm going to do is give you about 5 or 6 minutes to just work on this. I'm going to check the comments really quick and see if there's any questions before we move on to creating some of the finer branches. So just spend the next 5 minutes or so. If you're already all thought up, feel free to take a look at everybody else's progress. Very cool to see where everybody's from, by the way. Thanks again, everybody, for joining. I'm having lots of fun. So we'll be spending probably another hour painting, and then I'll spend the last half hour just like taking a look at anybody's painting who wants me to look at it. So like I said, I'm gonna give you 3 or 4 more minutes to kind of catch up to where we're at, and then we'll start doing some of the finer detail stuff. All right, I'm back now and I'm gonna start working on the branches. So this next part, I would just say that a lot of these branches get covered up. This next part is almost in a way kind of practice. When I was a kid, I remember I wanted to grow up and become like an animator for Pixar or Disney. And I remember watching this thing about how when they first started creating Pixar characters, they would create the actual skeleton of the character and then cover them up with, you know, their body or whatever. So I always kind of thought about that. I don't know why it stuck with me, but I kind of do the same thing when I create trees. I'll paint in all these branches because I want to know where the foliage is going to go. And I want to like create the shape of a tree that I really like before I put foliage down. So that's why I do it this way, just so you know. It's not because I want you to paint a whole bunch of branches and then cover them up because I think it's funny. It's mostly just because I like to create the shape of the tree. So with that said, I am using a liner brush for this next part. I use a liner brush because it holds a lot of paint and you can pull long brush strokes with it without having to reload your brush. If you notice on mine here, you can see, you can kind of see like brush strokes and things through the tree. I will cover that up eventually. Right now, I'm not too worried about it. But what I'm going to do next, I've got my liner brush. I'm going to dip it in water. And I'm going to load up my brush. I've got my alizarin, my raw umber, my blue. And what I want to do is add enough water where the paint is like ink. I don't want it to be like super, super runny, but I don't want it to be thick either, because if it's thick, it won't flow on the canvas. So you want it to be like ink. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to cover up some of these spots actually, because now they're distracting me a little bit. All right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off, I'm loading the brush. I'm going to start off by taking a branch off this larger branch. And again, I'm putting pressure on the brush. And then as I come out from further away from the trunk of the tree, I'm releasing the pressure and creating a thin branch. So you can see it goes from thick to thinner to almost like non-existent at the end. Now this might take some practice. It's not super easy to do right from the beginning, but it is really easy to do once you practice it. It's really easy. I think of this as a really easy technique just because I've done so many tree paintings. So it might look really easy, but it's a touch thing. So just like anything that you practice, you get better and better at the touch, the finesse part of it. So this is something you can just practice in a sketchbook, but I'm going to show you again here. You can start out away from the tree too. Almost start the motion before you touch the canvas. And then as you touch the canvas, you're starting to press harder and harder and harder as you go into a limb or a trunk of the tree. All right, so you can take some of these ones that you started and start extending them. You can see how hard I have to press to make the brush create a thicker branch. So a couple things when you're creating branches like this is you want to have shape. You don't want it to just be straight lines because that's boring. So you want to zigzag and wiggle the brush a little bit as you create these branches and limbs. All right, so another technique that you can use when you're creating these is you can start the branch within a bigger branch. So that way you have a consistent pressure, and then you come outside of the branch and you start releasing the pressure as you come away from it. Same thing in the branch, then coming out. I've got a nice consistent pressure, and then I start letting it go as I get further away. And if like, again, if you prefer to start out away from the branch, you just start the motion and you start pressing harder as you get in to the trunk of the tree or the limb. All right, so I'm going to go a little bit faster here now. Again, I'm not going to do a million branches just because we are going to cover them up, but I do want to, fill in the gaps a lot. Once we add the foliage in, start adding the foliage in, you can add branches in between the spaces of the foliage. Like I mentioned right in the beginning, I really loved Pixar animation and I was really fascinated with how they created the characters. I don't know if they still do it that way, but they used to create the skeleton and then build everything on top of the skeleton. And that's how I've painted trees my whole life, is build the skeleton of the tree, then add the foliage. I was going to say the flesh, but that was a little too weird. So, all right. So I'm just going around adding in, and like I mentioned just a minute ago, you can add a lot of branches in at the end after you add in the foliage. I just like to have a good idea of where am I going to put some of this foliage. All right, so you can spend this next few minutes here just putting in branches. When I move on to the next step with the foliage, you don't have to have as many branches as me or anything. This is just kind of like a practice thing at this point. So one thing I like to mention about trees is that sometimes people get the branches all going the same way. It's nice to throw in a branch that goes the opposite way and crisscrosses some of the other branches. I see that a lot with paintings, is that sometimes people forget to make branches go the other way. But just something to keep in mind. So when you create little tiny thin branches, you want to make sure that you have a decent amount of water in the brush and a really light touch. So if you're creating tiny little branches like this, they're almost as big as just a piece of hair. Just very, very light touch. Again, something you could practice in like a sketch pad. Just take some paint and practice doing these lines, trying to do thicker and thinner lines and trying to be consistent with them. It definitely takes some practice, but once you have that touch down and you kind of have a feel for how much pressure, like I wish I could just automatically tell you like the amount of pressure, how hard you should press, but it's definitely a feel thing. So once I have kind of like the basic, call it the skeleton of the tree, I usually will start adding in some foliage. And then I always add in branches later on, because usually my foliage pattern will be really sporadic and there might be like a big opening somewhere where I need to fill in a gap. So it doesn't look like the foliage is just floating there, but I'll talk about that when we start doing the foliage stuff. Again, if you maybe make a little bit of a mistake or anything like that, at this point, don't worry about it, because we'll be covering up some of this stuff anyway. All right, I'm going to cover my paint, and I'm going to give you another 3 or 4 minutes before we start working on foliage. So just something to mention here. If you are doing a painting, let's say without foliage, what you do is you do this exact same thing. You'd probably put in more branches and just really take your time with getting a lot of random branches, lots of different thicknesses to each of those branches. And then you start adding highlights to your tree and stuff like that. And this would work as a great simple painting. It looks really nice. It's really not super hard to paint. And you can use lots of different colors and lots of different styles with this painting. So even at this point, you've learned enough where you could create almost like a silhouette forest, which are really nice decorative paintings. So I'm gonna, like I said, I'm gonna give you another few minutes here working on branches, and then I'm gonna move on to doing the foliage. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments. All right, we got people from Florida, Tennessee, Massachusetts, Arkansas, London, Ontario, North Carolina. Very cool. I pretty much lived in Maine my entire life, so I've traveled a lot, though. I've seen a lot of places. I haven't been to London, but I've been to all the other places that were mentioned, I believe. So I travel around doing painting workshops. I haven't done them as much lately just because COVID kind of derailed that for, you know, a good solid 2 to 3 years. But getting back to it now, and looking forward to traveling around. I really love traveling and seeing different places. So looking forward to getting out there again. Maybe I'll see some of you in person someday. So I'm going to give you another minute or two on the tree branches, and then we'll do the first round of foliage. I haven't been to South Africa. That'd be a really cool place to go. I have a friend that I play golf with up here in Maine who's from South Africa. So it's a small world for sure. I've definitely been to Wisconsin a lot of times. I'll be out there. Actually, I'll be in Wisconsin end of July for the CrossFit Games. So that's that happens in Madison, and it's just basically people racing through workouts, which sounds weird, but it's really fun to watch. And I do CrossFit. That's not how I got injured, actually. I just got injured doing regular exercise stuff. But I do CrossFit, if you've heard of it. It's known as like the cult of exercise, basically, which is just a joke, but it's kind of funny. Once you do CrossFit, you can't not talk about it, as you can see me talking about it. All right, with that, what we're going to do is we're going to move on to doing some foliage. So I'm going to move on to a different brush now. I've got my flat brush that I talked about right in the beginning, and I love this flat brush. Comes in my brush set. Again, if you need some brushes, make sure you go to my website. I've got them on sale right now. But I've got this brush here, and the cool thing about this brush is the bristles they're soft, but they're kind of stiff, and they're like malleable, so you can move them around, and you can really beat on these brushes. And like the more you beat on it, the better it gets. So when you first get it, you know, its shape stays a little bit better, but over time it gets more and more beat up, and it's great for foliage. You'll see a lot of people online who teach painting doing foliage this way. So I'm going to show you two different ways that I'm going to do foliage today. And usually what I do in my own paintings is I combine these two techniques for my own paintings that I do to sell or for lessons and things like that. So I'm going to start off with blocking in the overall foliage shape. And what I want to do is I really want to focus on, when you think about a branch like this, the smaller branches that come off are where the foliage is. It's not necessarily along this branch. Yes, it will overlap that branch from smaller branches, but it's not on this branch. I think I've seen that a lot within my workshops, is that when people want to do foliage, they want to go along these branches. But in reality, the foliage will be out here at the tips of the smaller branches. Even though we didn't paint in every little branch, you have to visualize that there would be a lot of little branches here, and that's where the foliage goes. So I do use these long branches for guidelines, but I don't paint along the branch. I paint around it. So that way it makes a lot more sense. At the bottom of the tree, we kind of did it over here. The foliage kind of cascades. It can kind of cascade down, kind of come out, but it's very random and it kind of like gets more sporadic at the ends. So with all of that stuff said, what I'm going to do is I'm going to dip my brush in water. And I'm going to squish it really hard against the canvas, or I'm sorry, against my palette to get the bristles kind of worked up. I'm going to take my alizarin crimson and my raw umber and a little bit of blue. And I'm going to really swirl around and push really hard into this paint to get the bristles to splay out. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to tap and twist my brush. And you can see, again, with pressure, and that's why I added water to the paint, because it makes the paint a little bit more separated. As you get out to the ends here, you press lightly and you get a really nice foliage pattern. So again, like I mentioned, the foliage is at the ends of these smaller branches rather than along this long branch. As we get into this area where there's, we didn't paint a million little branches in here, but in reality there would be. So when you get into this area, this is where you start painting thicker. And then as you get out towards the end, like I said, it would overlap this big branch. But as you get out towards the end, you're tapping lighter. So that way you're getting more of a sporadic shape at the ends of the foliage. So when you come down to the end, when it cascades out towards the end of the branch, you want it to be really sporadic. And like I mentioned, what you want to do is just tap really lightly and twist the brush back and forth in your fingers so you're getting some really random brush strokes. If you have a hard time with that, like you don't have quite the touch for that yet, that's okay. What I would suggest doing, because I'm going to show you another technique in a minute, what I would suggest doing is doing more of this, where it's all painted together. A little bit more pressure on the brush. I'm just going to keep filling in. So over here, in the middle of the tree, you're most likely going to have a lot of foliage. So if you can at least get it blocked in like this, and again, leaving openings so you can see through the tree to the background. If you can get stuff blocked in like this, that's pretty much all you need, because what you can do, and I'll show you the other technique I was talking about, it's a little more tedious. So you can go back to your liner brush My touch isn't great right now because of my arm, but you can go around the edges of those big, basically blobs of foliage, and you can paint in little individual leaves. And how I do that is I basically just take the very tip of the brush, and I also twist the brush in my fingers just like before, and you're adding in different sized dots, basically. You can even do that down here, like even in the good stuff that you already created, you can go and add in little extra leaves. Like I said, it's a little bit more tedious, but it's a really effective way to create foliage, especially if you have a hard time with the flat brush, or if you don't have that brush. But you can get that brush on my website, so it's there if you want it. All right, so liner brush, a little more tedious, of course, but if you can like kind of get blocked in, go around the edges of those blocks of foliage and then just tap around, and you're creating these little sporadic leaves that are here and there. You could technically do all of the leaves in a liner brush if you wanted to, but that would take forever. All right, so I'm going to go back now to my flat brush because that's a lot faster. And I'm going to tap in. All right, I'll just come down here on my tree. Just kind of get that a little more solid with this color. Okay, with that same color, you can also go over your rocks and just make them a little more solid. So I mentioned earlier, and I'm just going to do one more step here, and then I'm going to give you a few minutes to kind of catch up. But you can add in branches after. So if you go back to your liner brush, just add a little bit more blue to that foliage color that you're using, because we want to match it to what we've been using for the tree branches. But you're basically just going to go back to your liner brush. And then in these areas that are open, you're going to start adding in more branches. And this is where I think the tree really comes to life, is when you add in these branches that are going through the foliage. It's funny, we actually see a lot more branches than we think when we actually look at a tree in nature. Something I've noticed over the years is that a lot of times you can see branches going right up through the foliage. And I think we're kind of accustomed to thinking that trees are really opaque, and sometimes trees are, depending on what type of tree it is, but unless it's like a really solid, like maple tree or oak tree, you can usually see branches a lot going up through the foliage, even in oak trees. So just connecting up some of the spots, coming through here and adding in little wispy branches that connect up the foliage. And again, it's a really light touch. All right, so I want to give you a few minutes. So I know that was a lot right there. I'm going to let mine kind of dry anyway. We'll be doing some highlight foliage. But the next step, what I'm going to do is start highlighting the trunk of the tree and some of the grass. So I'll give you a couple minutes here. And if you have any questions, let me know. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next step. I do see that a couple people have mentioned they had to leave, which I completely understand. Weekends are always busy, and I know people have things going on. So if you missed part of this, I am recording it and we'll have it on my website. I will post the link to that in the Facebook group page that you're in. So if There's 2 Facebook group pages that I shared this with, this live workshop today. Whichever one you're in, I'll be posting a link to the recording of this. So thanks for anybody who has had to head out. Thanks for joining today. What I'm going to do next is work on the highlights on the tree. So I'm going to be adding some yellow ochre to my palette. What I want to do for this, you can see here, got some yellow ochre on my palette. What I want to do here on this next step is kind of create a little bit of a light source. And what I want to do is have it coming right to left, excuse me, right to left, and then highlight part of the trunk of the tree. So if the light's coming across, it's going to highlight little bits of the foliage, and the light's coming down, it's going to cast light on parts of the tree because the foliage and branches will be casting shadow onto the tree because it will be catching the light out here. So that means if the light's coming here, it's going to catch this foliage, and this foliage will then cast shadows onto the trunk of the tree. So we have to kind of be aware of that. And that doesn't mean we have to paint in the, I'm going to go with my small flat brush. So anything small for this next part. That doesn't mean we have to like look at the foliage and then like think where the light's going to come through and hit this. We just kind of have to suggest that that's happening. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take my raw umber and my alizarin, and I'm going to add some yellow ochre to it. So just for a little bit of a color thing for everybody, yellow ochre and alizarin crimson are almost complementary colors. They're close complements. And so what will happen is when you mix complementary colors together, you'll get a muted earth tone. So basically muddy, in other words. Muddy colors are always kind of talked about in a bad way, but if you look at the best paintings, they use muddy colors really, really effectively. The thing is when you do a painting is you want to have a certain amount of muddy and neutral colors combined with saturated, vibrant colors. And people who are really good at painting are really good at using that combination. So that's why I'm using yellow ochre to highlight this color rather than white. So again, yellow ochre, alizarin crimson, a little bit of raw umber. We've got a color here that's like a muted kind of brownish color. I'm going to come up here again, light's coming across. I'm turning my flat brush up on its side. And I'm going to do kind of these little vertical brush strokes. And as I go to the back of the tree, I'm doing really light pressure because the light's not reaching that because trees are rounded. So the back side of the tree will be a little bit more in shadow, but there will be a little bit of color. So I'm kind of concentrating this color on the front half of the tree. And maybe we have a root that comes down off the tree, catches a little bit of light. All right, so like I mentioned, light's coming, catching some of the foliage and branches. I'm going to leave a little dark gap there. I'm going to come up here and highlight the tree like so. All right, so I'm getting the sense of, I'm going to come here, down here and just do another layer. I'm getting the sense of some light and shadow here coming down and hitting the tree. I'm gonna do a little highlight on this branch. Like so. Little highlight coming up through this part, just little dabs of color, basically. All right, so next what I want to do is I want to do the same thing. I'm going to take that same color. I'm adding a little more yellow to it and just a tiny touch of white. Okay, so now the color is a little bit lighter. Again, doing little vertical brush strokes to create texture. And come over here on the branch and just highlight little bits. So the strongest highlights will be out towards the left-hand side of the tree. I'm going to go a little bit lighter, so a little more yellow. I'm going to do a third round, a little bit of white. Still have my alizarin in there to keep it muted. And when I do the brightest highlight, I don't want to do the very edge of the tree out here. I want to, a tree is rounded. So if you have ever painted a sphere or an apple, you know the highlight isn't on the edge, it's actually within that front edge. And that's what makes it more rounded looking. Just going to go back to my original highlight color and just going to work a little more color in there. So back to my highlight color. Again, the brightest highlight isn't on the edge, it's just within. A couple people have asked about the brushes through direct message, and the brushes are automatically $20 off right now. So just they're normally $20 more. So if you go, you'll see that it shows that they're on sale. There isn't a coupon code or anything though. All right, so what I'm going to do now is this shadow itself is flat because it's just basically a dark color. What I want to do is go into my alizarin, raw umber, little yellow ochre, we're making a dark color, but something that's a little more textured. So we're going to go into the shadow itself. And add in color that's a little bit more, not as flat, I should say. All right, so we've got some nice highlight on our tree now. I'm going to do the same thing on the rocks. So we're going to take the same colors, except we're going to add a little blue to it. So we've got alizarin, raw umber, a little bit of yellow ochre, a little bit of blue. And then what we're going to do is going to go down onto the rocks here. And this is very subtle. I'm going to highlight out towards that light source, so left to right. And rocks have lots of like random cracks and crevices. So I'm going to do some highlights out this way, but as I go back, you can see I leave little dark areas to create kind of these little crevices. So it's very subtle highlight. This rock can be a little more direct because it's kind of like this little flat rock. And then this one back here, maybe just a little touch of a highlight since it's behind the tree. I will, however, add a little white to that same color. A little bit more yellow to kind of keep within the theme. We want it to be like a purple gray color. Again, highlighting out towards my light source. And with that gray color, I'm actually going to put a little bit of that on the back of my tree. And what that does is it creates what we call a reflected highlight. And that's a cool highlight on a shadow side of a tree. So it's a little bit more of an advanced kind of technique, but we're taking this cool color, we're adding almost like this bluish haze on the back side of the tree. And you can do that with maybe some roots coming down. Also on the back of the rocks. Got that nice bluish reflected highlight. Those are one of the things that it's a subtle, really subtle trick, but it's a really nice, effective way of adding some dimension to your tree. All right, one more thing on the foreground for now, and that's going to be really subtle. We're going to go to the fan brush. And again, I know we kind of go through some of this stuff quickly. This is recorded and you will be able to watch it again. So if it's anything that you need to see over and over, you can watch it again and pick it up maybe the second time you watch it through. So don't worry if you get behind on this at all. Like I said, you'll be able to watch this later this afternoon anyway. So I'll have it ready on my website. What we're going to do is going to go into a fan brush with some alizarin. some raw umber, and some yellow. And we want to create a grass color that's very harmonizing. I'm going to go a little bit more raw umber. And I'm going to start with this color. So I'm going to come down here with my fan brush, very light brush strokes, long, kind of wispy brush strokes. I'm leaving lots of dark area around, just so, especially in behind the rock here, we want that to be nice and dark. And then going in behind here, I'm going to leave this really dark right above, right behind the tree, because we want that to look like it's in shadow. And then down through here, very sporadic, and light pressure. Okay, so that's the first round of the grass. What I want to do now, instead of using white, we're just going to use a little yellow ochre. We're going to lighten up that color a little bit. And then really light pressure. We're not highlighting everywhere because we want it to look, relatively dark around the tree. We'll do a little bit of highlight here by the rock. But we want this to be very subtle. All right, and that's pretty much as far as I'd take the grass. Like I said, we're in the woods. It's not something I want to have like super bright highlights on. I will take a little bit of that tree color and go a little bit brighter. Just in a few spots. And as you can see, acrylic paint does dry darker, so the rocks have dried a little bit darker, and that's another thing you can kind of go back to if you want and brighten up. So just some ultramarine blue, raw umber, a little yellow ochre, and a little bit of white. If it looks too purple, just add some more blue to it. Right, so just a little subtle highlight there. All right, we got one more step to do on the foreground, and then we'll pop in a few highlights in the background and we'll call it good. I'm going to give you a minute or two. If you have any questions, post them down in the comments. And I will get to those. I'm just going to give you a minute or two before I do a little bit of highlighting on the foliage. All right, I'm going to do the last two steps just because time flies when you're having fun. It's 12:30. I want to show just some subtle highlights on the foliage, popping in some bright highlights in the background, and then I want to be able to take a look at your paintings. So, just like we did before with the flat brush, we're going to do the same type of foliage. And then we're also going to use the liner brush as well. So for this next step, I'm going to add some of my cadmium red to my palette. I'm going to take some of my alizarin, a little bit of raw umber, and then a little cad red. We'll go a little bit more alizarin. I'm going to tap right into it, just like before. And my light source is coming from the right. And what I'm going to do is just tap out towards my light source. And again, this is subtle. We don't want to make this super, super bright. But we want to tap that color out towards our light source there. And down here as well, just really light pressure. Then as we go into the middle of the tree, we want kind of a sense that some of the foliage down here is getting highlighted. Doesn't have to be a lot. And as we go to the left or away from the light source, depending on how you have your painting set up, we're getting more sporadic. So just really kind of random touches out there on the left-hand side. All right, and then next phase, same thing, except we're adding more cad red. You can see it's much brighter. Tapping into the paint. Right at the very top and out towards the edges. We're going brighter. In through here, really sporadic. So I'm barely touching the canvas and just letting the paint kind of come off. And again, that's where this nice type of brush works really, really well. As I move away, really random. All right, and then the last step to that would be taking the liner brush, going into that color, a little more cad red, and then coming out to the end and highlighting little individual leaves that are way out, catching the light coming down through. You don't have to cover up all the dark because some of these leaves would be in shadow. And even in through here, you can pick out a few leaves here and there, just basically doing little dabs, little dots that have brighter red leaves that are just catching some of the light. Okay, and that's something that you can play around with. This is a little bit more tedious, but you can play around with how many bright little leaves you put in. That's something you can work on, even all the way over here. You can do little suggestions of light getting through and just catching a leaf or two in random spots. If you get a leaf that you don't like I don't like this one, is way too bright, just go back to a dark color and tap over it to darken it up. All right, so you can make that as bright as you want. I like to keep it, relatively dark. I like the kind of darker atmosphere to the painting. Last thing I'm going to do, and then we'll take a look at your paintings for anybody who wants me to look at them. I always do this at the very end. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my flat brush. I'm going to take some pure white. And just like we did in the very beginning, I'm going to open up some spots that are really bright in the background. So what we're doing is we're really increasing the contrast. You can make tree shapes if you want in the background. Or maybe you just want to brighten up a spot like this. This opens up that background really, really nice. I really like opening up right next to the tree because of the amount of contrast it creates. right, so one thing I'm going to adjust is just some of the sizes of these openings, so I don't want them all to be exactly the same. And I'm also going to kind of work out some openings that are up a little bit higher. All right, so that's how you can increase the contrast pretty drastically at the end, which a bigger range of contrast is always really nice in a painting, depending on what you're going for. If you're going for a muted look, obviously you're not looking for a huge range of values, but if you ever go to a museum and look at some of the old master landscape painters, they are very effective at using light and dark to create almost a dramatic feel to their painting. So something to practice is getting that big range of values. And that's why I save the white at the end, just because I like how it just pops at the very end of the painting. All right, so that's all the techniques for this painting. I hope you enjoyed doing that. What I'd like to do now is, if you want to critique, please comment in the chat and I will take a look and we can go over your painting together. So I'm going to let you look at that just for a minute. What I'll do is I will be posting this lesson to my website a little bit later today, and I will be sharing a link, and I'll have an image of this painting too that you can reference. So go ahead, work on that for just a minute or two, and then just comment in the chat if you'd like me to take a look at your painting. All right, so I'm going to take a look now. I'm just going to turn the camera, but I will have an image for you guys to reference. So I know, like, kind of in 3 hours, which we almost worked for 3 hours minus the kind of critique time in the middle. Very small painting, 11 by 14. obviously we kind of worked fast, and if you have, any questions or forget anything, just go back and watch the video again, which I'll be posting later today. All right. All right, I'm just going through the comments, just make sure I start at the top. Okay, Benjamin, yours is the first comment here, so I'm gonna look for yours.
Tim, can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Wonderful.
I've got you up on the screen. So what'd you think?
I'm happy with it. I like my trunk quite a bit. I like your teaching quite a bit too. And while I got your attention, you helped me so much over the last 3 years of this pandemic. You have no idea. There's been some really dark times, but going into your world of painting and then making my life so much better that way. Thank you so much, man.
Oh, thanks a lot. I appreciate that. And like that goes right back at you guys too. I'm in the same boat, and it's, being stuck inside and like not being able to do a whole lot. And let's just be honest, it was kind of a depressing time. So
Yeah, for
I
sure.
appreciate you saying that. And it goes back to you guys thanks for doing lessons and like emailing me and stuff. It definitely helped me get through it too. So your painting's awesome. Going to that, I agree. The trunk of the tree looks great. One of my favorite things about it, just looking at it quickly here, is the reflected highlight on the back of it. I don't know why, but it just makes the tree look that much more rounded. And it's just really, really great. Contrast is so nice too. The shape of the tree, very cool. I like how it kind of has like that wispy, wavy part to it as it's going off the side of the canvas. And then for the misty forest part of it, it's just excellent. Looks really, really great. It looks very natural. Lots of nice natural color. The color all harmonizes very well. If I were to do anything, one thing that I think of off the top of my head, just maybe a few more tiny branches in the openings as you get towards the end of your foliage. Not a lot more, maybe just a couple more. Just adds a little character to the tree. Other than that, if there was something, I think yours, it might be the camera too, but yours has more of a kind of tonal muted feel. If you wanted more color, you could always pop more color in the foreground. Not saying that you should do that, just saying if that's something you were looking for. I actually like the color scale that you're within. So
Awesome. Thank you so much for that advice. And again, I appreciate you more than I could really explain in the 4 seconds I have here.
hey, I really appreciate you, and I really thank you for saying that. That means a lot to me.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, so awesome. I love this. This is so cool. So I'm gonna go to and actually thank you for everybody who's commenting about my arm, who has commented about my arm. This was the first painting I've done mostly right-handed, so I was a little bit nervous. I'm like 3.5 weeks into this post-surgery stuff. Still haven't started physical therapy. I start it next week. So very limited in my range of motion, have to do small paintings, but thank you for all the kind comments about that. It's very nice honestly, it's really nice to paint right-handed again. I've been painting left-handed for the last couple of weeks, and it's not easy to do. Teresa, I just want to make sure you wanted a critique here. Is that right? I'm going to pop you on here, and you can, if you don't want one, you can just tell me. Nope, I lost you. All right, I have you up here. Let's see. I think I have you unmuted.
Yes,
Okay.
you do. Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm struggling along. This negative start was a little bit reverse of what I've been used to.
Yeah, yeah, it's like a technique that's a little bit different for sure.
Yeah, that's one reason
Honestly,
I wanted.
the first thing I
wanted to try
noticed, I'm sorry.
I wanted to try it.
Oh, yeah. Actually, the first thing I noticed on your painting is like that you did really well with that technique. The forest in behind your focal tree looks really good to me. Do you find a certain part of it that was a struggle?
The reverse thinking,
Mm-hmm.
that was the hardest. I'm 68. Hello. I was used to doing ceramics, and you start with dark and you go to light.
Right.
So it's new.
Yeah, and one thing with this type of painting, you don't have to do it that way. The only thing the cool thing about doing it this way is it gives it a different vibe. It kind of creates a different sense of atmosphere. It creates a lot of hazy, soft edges that kind of
Yes,
just
it
happen accidentally.
I like it.
No, I'm glad, because like I think it's once you do it a few times, you kind of start thinking of it a little bit easier, like it comes to you a little bit easier. But I think you did a great job with the tree, like specifically the background. The tree shapes are really good. You have lots of uneven spacing between the trees, which is like ideal, because the more random you get, the more realistic it looks. And I think your background, it looks really, really great.
Well, we have woods behind me, so I'm like looking out and going, no, they're
Perfect.
not evenly spaced.
Perfect. Like that's the best thing. Like if you can look outside and see the forest,
Yeah.
makes it a lot easier.
And our pine trees here in North Florida are a little bit fuller than what your trees are. Yours look more like maples.
Yeah, we have lots of maple trees, lots of poplar trees, and especially like since we have such a lot of seasons, we have all 4 seasons like very distinctly. As you get into the later summer, early fall, like the trees are really sparse. So
yeah, we have 3 weeks of winter sporadically spaced in the 4 months.
that's fun. Yeah, I'm thinking about moving to Florida, so
Come on, honey. We got lots
I'm
of
tired
space.
of winter, trust me. So for the other parts of your painting, I would say excellent job on the background, really, really nice. The foreground tree, it looks like it's coming along well. One thing I would do is where you come out to the edge of the foliage within the painting, all the branches kind of come out to the same spot. What I would do is try to have 1 or 2 of those branches reach out beyond that border a little bit, just so you get a little bit more sporadic shape.
Okay.
Other than that, hard to tell based on the camera. Have you done any highlights on the tree yet?
Yes, I did, and they're very subtle.
Okay.
It's more like the sun is just hitting the edges.
Yep. Yeah, I can actually kind of see a little bit on the right hand edge there of the foliage, and I think
well, I did left to right, but
left to right.
That's me.
I see everything backwards on this camera. So what I would do is I like that idea by just like kind of doing a silhouette highlight. You could actually bring the color up a little bit more. So I would do like maybe 1 more round of just a little bit brighter.
Okay. Thanks.
But awesome job.
Well, for my first one, I'm kind of tickled with it.
Oh, great. I'm happy to hear that.
Heal up. We need more.
Thanks a lot. And I'll hopefully see you again on here soon.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Do that.
All right. So let's see, make sure all right. Imogen, hopefully I'm not pronouncing your name wrong. Everybody pronounces my last name wrong. So if I did, we're in good company. So let's see. Oh, wow, nice. Let's see. So see if I got you unmuted.
Hello,
Hi, how are you?
doing well.
Did I pronounce your name right? Is it Imogen?
Yeah, you did Imogen.
Imogen, okay.
And I'm guilty of mispronouncing your last name too.
Oh, well, the thing is, it's not necessarily mispronounced. It's just that where I live, we pronounce it differently. So
Yeah,
it's just one of those random weird things. But
my housemate has the same last name. He
oh, no
pronounces it
kidding.
Gagnon.
Yeah, Gagnon. Yeah, that's probably like the majority of how people say it throughout the country. I live up here in French country, and
Yeah,
we use a French pronunciation. So which is weird. French last names are very weird. They like don't sound anything like how their name is actually spelled. And that pretty much goes for all of the there's a lot of Acadian French people up here, and we have
I'm from Ontario, so.
oh nice. I'm sure you've seen lots of our name then. So you're painting, we'll get to that. That's awesome. I love the character of it. That is great.
Thank you.
Background, excellent, nice job there. Lots of nice depth. I love the foreground tree. That's got so much character to it and so much style. I love it.
Thank you so much.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was really happy with the way the trunk came out. You were saying an old tree, and so I went crooked. And then I had a hard time with the foliage, and I don't use fan brushes very often, but I have them. Blocking in the background to start, the grass area was difficult to get the paint to stick. Yours looked very thick and mine was just super thin, and I went over to a flat brush pretty quickly.
Okay.
But I
yeah.
stuck to it for the highlights of the grass. So
Okay, cool. So you did the highlights with a flat brush, you said?
no, the highlights with the fan brush because I couldn't get it to work for the background.
Okay, so like that initial part, blocking in the dark part, you used a flat brush?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's completely fine. I actually do flat brush a lot of times too. And a lot of times it will depend on what kind of brush can hold the most paint. Fan brushes, depending on, like if you mix the paint with a fan brush, sometimes you can really like get a lot in the fan brush and then it goes on a little bit easier. And then it can be like, how much water you put in the paint. So if you put a lot of water in the paint, it will be really thin and it won't stick very well. So that's kind of a balance of just playing around with it, but using a flat brush is no problem. So you actually just want to use whatever tool works for you, honestly. So when it comes to like the foliage and your branches and your tree, everything looks really, really good. I love the highlights. I wouldn't want to change your style at all, but what I would do is add maybe just a few more branches in some of the areas where you see a lot of foliage, like all the way on the, I would say it's the right edge, I think. So on that side looks pretty good. I would say the other side, yeah, add maybe just maybe another branch or two just to kind of support that foliage. Other than that, I really like the rocks. The rocks look really good. The grass looks really good too. You have some really nice bright highlights. I would look for like a middle tone so something between the dark color and the light color, and add just a little bit of that mid tone in there to mix in as well.
Thank you.
But that's it. I love the style. It looks great.
Thank you. So nice to talk to you.
You
I
too.
love your clouds. They inspired me greatly.
Thanks a lot. I'll have to do one of these with clouds sometime.
Yay.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Take care.
All right, Karen, coming to you next. Oh, I lost you. Okay, there, I found you. Oh, wow, nice. All right, so All right, I think I've got you unmuted.
Yeah,
That's awesome. Nice job.
thank you.
Um,
That negative space stuff is very hard concept for me.
oh, you did it. You did it very well.
Thank you.
Your lighting on the tree is excellent. Like that's you did the lighting really, really well, like on the ground, and the contrast is so nice.
Thank you. I'm a
You're
good teacher.
Oh, thanks. No, it's
I
all you
love
got.
your work.
I just give you guidance. You're the ones painting it. So that's awesome. Like your branches are so good. I really don't have anything negative to say or anything to change. I think it's just an awesome painting.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Do you have any thoughts? Anything that you don't like about it?
No, not really. I think I'm pretty happy with it. I think I can follow you really well. You're really good at teaching. So.
Oh, thanks. You know, one of my favorite things.
I love seeing everybody else's too, the differences.
Yeah, I love that too. One thing I just want to point out on yours that's really, really good, just for everybody else to see. That little bright white opening up in that dark area of the tree.
Right here.
Yeah, that's like one of my favorite parts of the painting, because what that does is it creates so much depth within the top part of the painting. And that's something that's hard to do in this painting itself, because that background is so kind of like painted together. That one little spot, just like it makes the tree pop in the foreground, and it opens up the background a lot. And it's funny how one little thing can do that.
Yeah, I had a hard time with that on the first one that we did a month ago or so. I had a hard time with getting those little spots in the right places.
Oh, they
didn't look natural.
No, they look really good now.
Great, thanks.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Okay, Margaret, coming to you next. Oh, look at that. Let's see. All right, I've got you up here. Wow, nice job.
Thank you.
Wow, I love that. That tree shape is so good. I'm admiring it. One of my favorite things right off the top here is I like the thick branch on the I guess left side. I'm not sure. I think everything's the opposite for me, but left side, and then you have a branch that's almost like cut off, like part of it broke off maybe at one point, which is so nice. Very nice little character elements that you've added to the tree.
And I tried to fix the gradation on the top from the dark to the lighter, and kind of screwed it up. So I left it.
You know, it's funny you say that, because like I personally really like how on one side it's a little bit more purple, and it might be just lighting a little bit, but
I think it is too. Yes.
I think the gradation looks really good. The one thing I would say is that the little opening that you have above that thick branch.
Yes. Yep.
It might just stand out a little too much. And what you can do is take a little bit of that background color, and with like a liner brush, just kind of like almost add leaves within that opening, if that makes sense.
Yes. Yeah.
That will take away like the sharp edges from it, and it would help a lot. That's actually one of the only things I would say. I think your color scheme is really nice. And you almost have like this cool tunnel effect between all the trees, where it's like almost like these little tunnels going back. And I love that. It's really cool. It creates a lot of depth. Love the rocks. Yeah, I think that one little opening might be a little bit of an eye catcher. So I would maybe play around with that. Yeah. Other than that, I wouldn't touch anything else.
Oh, thank you so much. You're an excellent teacher.
Oh, thanks a lot. I really
this is only my
painter.
Thank you. This is only my fourth acrylic painting, so I am very happy with it, I gotta say.
Wow, that is impressive.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I
Thanks
do
for
have to
sharing
work
that.
on the rocks, but
What's that?
I have to work on the rocks. Rocks are my nemesis.
I think the rocks look good. I mean, I like the lighting, they almost look just kind of like silhouette rocks to me, but I can see highlights
Yeah.
on them. I think they look good.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, Sharon, I've got you up here.
All right, I have to figure out how to turn it around. Sorry. All right, wait, there, maybe this. Well, I guess I could turn oh, there it is at the top. There we go.
Oh, there we go. Yeah. Oh, nice. I like how you move the tree to the opposite side.
Well, I am left-handed, so there's that.
That makes it easier. Yeah, I should have had you painting the painting today.
No. You can do better left-handed than I can right or
That's not
left-handed.
true. No, trust me. I've tried painting left-handed all of the last few weeks, and it is not easy.
Well, I'm not even going to begin to try to do right-handed.
You should try sometime just for fun, just to see. Just do a background right-handed. At least the background's not hard.
It might help me with not overthinking like the limbs. If I did it, you know what I'm saying? Like it would be practiced and more natural looking maybe if I tried it that way. Anyway.
No, I think like that's actually a good point. Like I've found when I paint left-handed, I get different shapes, and I am going to try to incorporate that going forward with some of my own artwork. It feels awkward, but I think the more you do it, you probably get used to it, and like you get some different shapes. So
right.
But I love your painting. It came out really, really nice. The background, the part that we're kind of focused on looks great. You have like lots of different width trees. You have some thick ones, you have some thinner ones, really nice contrast. I don't see anything I would change in the background. There's one little part, and like I'll just be picky with you because you're painting so good. The very thick tree on the left-hand side or right-hand side.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. I see it too.
It's got a little bit, maybe a little too white underneath it.
Right.
I think if you tried to find like that mid-tone color and just lightly brush to give it a little bit more ground, it catches the eye a little bit just because the land goes right underneath it.
Gotcha.
I think it kind of just draws the eye a little bit.
Well, I'm trying to get rid of this tree, which is why I was going that way with it, because that one just looked like a fork sticking up there to me. So that's why but I couldn't figure out how to just totally get rid of it without, I don't know. I like the bottom, I just don't like the top. So
I think I personally don't. I think that tree looks fine to me, but I know how it goes when you see something that you just don't personally like. It's hard to not see it. So you can always try to mix like a mid-tone color and try to like maybe eliminate one branch, and that will change it quite a bit. But as for the foreground, that's excellent. I love the shape of the tree. You highlighted it perfectly. You added the foliage really nice, so you can kind of see the branches going up through it.
I still need to add a little bit more highlights to the foliage and I haven't really highlighted the grass a whole lot. So I'm running out of time. I'm slower than y'all are because I'm left-handed.
No, and I don't expect like everybody to be finished on the painting anyway. It's obviously something you can keep working on. I think if to kind of give you some ideas, the saturation level in your painting is kind of all on the same level right now. So adding in those highlights are really going to make things pop because you want to have that range of saturated color.
Right. It does look kind of muddy down at the bottom.
Yeah. It doesn't really look, it doesn't look muddy to me. It looks kind of like just mid-tone. So I think if you like add in a few highlights to it, now all of a sudden things start popping.
Okay.
But awesome job.
Thanks. Thank you. I appreciate you very much.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate you too. All right, Martha, coming to you next. Oh, wow. Nice. Let's see.
All
Okay.
right, I'm unmuted.
Awesome. Wow, I love it. I love all the colors. That's so great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's cool because like when I looked at your painting before, it kind of had like the trees were going down all the way to the bottom, and it kind of had like that marshy feel in a way. But then like you added in, I love how you added in the white even more because now it has like a lot of depth, and you just have like a really cool style. I've seen so many of your paintings because I'm friends with you on Facebook, so I see some of your paintings sometimes. But I really love the style.
Thank you so much.
You're
You
welcome.
have no idea how much that means. Thank you.
Oh, no, of course. No, honestly, like I said, I've got you as a friend on Facebook, and I've see you post some paintings, and I know you do some classes and things like that too. Right? You do classes, don't you?
I do just simple little classes with,
Yep.
you know, a handful of people.
Yeah,
Not like
no,
you
yeah,
do.
I thought that's what I had seen before. So
Yeah.
sometimes
We
I
just take
mix people
photos
up.
and paint them. That's what we do.
Oh, that's awesome. I love it. But I loved your style, and I think it came out great. I like that you put your own take on it, and like yeah, like I don't really have any suggestions to change anything. I think if anything, if I were to like look at it and try to pick out things, it would be things about like value and color and things like that. But I think it's all really good. You got nice shadows, you got good saturation, you have a good color range. Looks awesome to me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Any thoughts or anything that you'd want me to address?
Rocks are hard for me. Very, very hard. And right in here, I keep looking at this. I feel like I need more shadow right in there.
Yeah, actually, you know, that's not a bad idea. I would agree with you that you could add in a darker branch going in through there because it will give it a little bit more definition.
Just kind of
because those colors were competing a little bit, so you kind of lose that branch.
Yeah, and
no, that looks good. That looks good. That change was nice.
Stretch it in. Okay.
Yeah, I love it.
Probably here too, huh?
Yeah, it's one of those things that you can kind of play around with.
Bring
Value
the
wise
branch to the front. Yeah, while you were talking to everybody, I was changing it because I was listening to everything you said. I gotta fix this. Oh, I gotta fix that.
That's one thing that's hard. Like that's knowing when to stop, right? Like when to.
Yeah, I dig at them a lot, but yeah, it is hard. But
you gotta be more lazy like me, and then like the lazier you are, the less you like pick at it because you're just like, okay, that's good enough. Awesome job though. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you.
And can you tell us the name of your?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, can you tell us the name of the Facebook group?
Yep. So I have like there's two. If you just type my name in and then type in free, like Tim Gagnon, Gagnon is how I say it, but that's like misleading because nobody will ever spell it right if I tell you that. If you just type in my name and free, there should be one that says Tim Gagnon free painting lessons or something like that, or free something. And then the other one is just my name and critique, and it will come up as that group. That group is all customers, current and former. So depending on if you got a lesson or not, you can get in that group, but you can get into the free one either way. So
great, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, Francesco, coming back to you. You're still there.
Yeah, hello, can you see? Yeah.
Hey, all right. Oh wow, nice.
Yes.
Is that 16 by 20, that painting?
This is, I think, I'm not sure actually. I think
it looks a little bigger. I love it though. I love, like I've always feel like these paintings, and just goes for everybody. These paintings are like so much fun to do on a really big canvas. So if you ever like have a chance to do something bigger than you normally do, this is a great one to do.
I think it's 20, yeah, it is actually, yeah.
Awesome job. Like I really like, again, I said it the first time when I looked at this, like the kind of like the random brushstrokes that you have there in the background are really effective. It creates a really cool kind of contrast. So I love that. I love the shape of the tree. The background, excellent. One of the favorite things you did is that little tiny branch, that little kind of shoot off the trunk of the tree with some leaves on it. Like all those little things are just so effective, especially in these paintings. I love the old fence too. That's nice.
Okay.
Any I'm not seeing anything I would change. If I did anything, it would probably be just adding, and again, you can take this with a grain of salt because there's not a lot I would change. Maybe add in a few more branches throughout the foliage, just a few more, and then maybe a few more highlights on the foliage out towards the light source, just to kind of like brighten those up. That might just be camera. Again, like these like doing the Zoom class, you can't always necessarily see it as well as you'd like to, but maybe a few more highlights with a little more saturation in the color.
I think personally, after having seen also some of the other pictures, there was one that had very nice highlights a few minutes ago. I think I will put more highlights here, like in bands like you and the other person did, and and also foliage was a bit tricky too.
Yeah, if you wanted to, you know how you did that little kind of shoot off the trunk with the leaves? Yeah, you did those leaves really, really well. What you could do is go up through the foliage in the top, and wherever you see like kind of like and don't take this the wrong way, but a blob of paint, like just go around the border of it and add a few leaves, and then with your liner brush or your small brush, and that will make the foliage look so much more realistic.
Right, cool. I will have to dash off, but I wanted to say thank you very much for this. It was a really nice lesson.
All right, well, thank you. I appreciate you joining.
Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot.
Bye bye.
All right, I'm gonna let's see. I'm gonna come to Anna next. All right. Nice job.
Now I'm not happy.
I'm sorry?
I'm not happy with it.
Not happy? Okay.
No.
Give me some thoughts give me a couple things that you're not happy with.
This highlight here,
Mhm.
I'm not, and also here.
The foliage. So okay, the highlight I would say is it's good. As it goes back to the back part of the tree, it probably stays a little too light. So if you can go with a darker color and work back, so go from the dark side of the tree and work back through the highlight. What will happen is it will start to round it a little bit more rather than having like a flat highlight coming across. So as the highlight is out in the front, it should be a little bit brighter, but as it goes around, it should start to get a little bit darker. So I would work some dark color back into it. I hope you're happy with the background. Like the background looks really good. I would maybe extend the foliage into that open spot on the side a little bit further. And then the highlights, did you, it kind of looks like there might be like some yellow in the mixture.
Yes.
I would probably go over them and like try to keep it a little bit darker. Just because what happens is the yellow makes the value of the color almost the same as the background, and then it competes with the background. So I'd want it to be maybe slightly darker and probably stick more on like the alizarin crimson red side. You can add yellow, but if you do, you're going to want a really dark base underneath it, so that way it doesn't compete with the background.
Okay. Thank you.
The background's awesome though, and then the ground up front, like all of the little kind of like bumps and undulations and things like, it looks really good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks a lot. Okay, just trying to find the next one here. All right, let's see. If I missed you, comment down below. I think I got everybody. All right, I apologize if I missed anybody. I don't think I did, but I think I got everybody. I appreciate everybody who is willing to share your paintings today, just because it does really help everyone. Helps me too. Like I like seeing you guys' stuff, and then like I pick up little ideas and everything. So I will be doing another workshop again. Thank you everyone for joining me today. Really appreciate it. Had a lot of fun. It was a fun, colorful painting to do. And again, this technique, really fun to do on a bigger canvas. And then really just, once you get the hang of it, you can start taking it further and further and further. Because all it is just taking different values, creating depth, and then just painting a fun foreground. And the better you get at little details and techniques, like I said, the further you can take this type of painting, and they just look really good. So awesome. Thanks a lot for joining. Just one last little plug. If you enjoyed the Zoom lessons, I'm going to be doing 2 a month for people who are members of my website. If you get a chance, check out my website. It's just myname.com. And I'll be doing some workshops. I got brushes. If you liked my brushes, if you thought, you know, something you might want to try, check them out. They'll be on sale for the rest of the week. And then, yeah, I've got other online lessons you can check out too on my website. So I hope you had a lot of fun. And if you have any questions, always feel free to post in the group page, or you can just email me, tim@timgagnon.com. That's TIMGAGNON, Gagnon, Gagnon. Doesn't really make any sense. tim@timgagnon.com. That's my email. If you have any questions, if you want me to take a look at this, you didn't want to show it on Zoom, but you want me to take a look, just email me. Yeah, so that's it. I had a lot of fun. Thanks a lot for joining. I'll be sure to let you guys know about the next one. And yeah, awesome. Hope you guys have a great day. Hopefully it's nice and warm and sunny wherever you are. I'm really looking forward to some nice, good weather. And again, I appreciate all the well wishes for my shoulder. It's getting better, just takes time. So thanks again, everybody. I'm going to be signing off now. I will post the recording of this hopefully tonight. If not tonight, it will be on there by tomorrow. So thanks again. Keep painting, and I'll see you all again soon. Have a good day.